The fiscal sponsor rule is a very diverse playing ground, if you will, in terms of what is fiscal sponsorship, what's being provided. Strangely, the two main forms of fiscal sponsorship are models. There are literally models out there. One's called Model A and one is called Model C. Model A fiscal sponsorship it's a comprehensive fiscal sponsorship approach. Model C is a pre-approved grant model approach. For the most part, when you are thinking about being a fiscally sponsored project, you want to consider whether you should be Model A or Model C. And within that, I'll conjecture and state, for the record, that for the most part, Model C makes sense in very particular circumstances, and Model A does as well. So the two twain shall not meet, in my opinion, for the most part, okay? But let's discuss some of the nuances of Model A and Model C, because in your pursuit of the right fiscal sponsor, you want to know which kind of model you want to pursue as well. Some agencies only provide Model C services. Some only provide Model A. Some provide both. And you want to understand what each fiscal sponsor does and what they provide within these two models. Model A, as I stated earlier, it's comprehensive. It means everything. And what do I mean by everything? Meaning that the fiscal sponsor literally receives the funds and it also disperses the funds. It manages the bank accounts of the charitable initiative. It does all the accounting around the charitable initiative. It cuts all the checks, ACH's wires. It pays all the employees. It 1099s all the independent contractors. Everything is done by the fiscal sponsor. Financial statements are produced at the end of the month, generally speaking. Hopefully, by the way, not every fiscal sponsor does that, but they should. And the sponsee gets the benefit of all these comprehensive services, right? Full financial accounting. Model C is pre-approved grant model. And pre-approved grant model is much more amenable to major grants for a specific charitable project that in and of itself, it's not its own 501c3. For example, Bill and Melinda Gates gives a grant to a charitable initiative for $1 million. It's not set up with its own legality to help do malaria research, right? And the founders of that don't have their own legal entity. They come underneath an umbrella and they're going to do everything. They've submitted a budget that they already submitted to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which says all of their expenditures that they're going to have, the project. It's a pre-approved grant, if you will, and the budget is attached to it. That pre-approved grant is then submitted to the fiscal sponsor. They sign an agreement to do what we call Model C pre-approved grant. Money comes in, the $1 million comes in from Bill and Melinda Gates. And remember, I've said previously, a private foundation will give to a public charity. That's why the Bill and Melinda Gates needs an actual 501c3. The funds are received. And now, actually, the fiscal sponsor takes its percentage, whatever the negotiated percentage is. A lot of times it's around 3%, but could be lower depending upon the situation. And it disperses the remaining funds to the sponsee, hopefully to an entity like an LLC, of which now the LLC has the funds, less than 3%, and it begins to spend the money pursuant to the budget that was approved by the parties, both Bill and Melinda Gates, and by the grantee, and by the sub-grantee, which is really the sponsee. And that's really important to understand. Now, at the end, or sort of the exhaustion of the spending of these funds, the sponsee is to submit an actual accounting. It submitted a budget, which is a projected accounting. Now it has to submit an actual accounting with receipts and proof of funds being spent. And the sponsor at this point will look at the accounting. It will determine through its own review whether or not it's complied with the budget, the sponsee has complied with the original budget, whether the backup documentation reflects that, and there's an audit trail for them. And then it will submit a report to the grantor, in this case, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, giving the financial data back to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to actually assert and confirm that actually the money was spent in exactly the same way that it was supposed to be spent. That's not comprehensive accounting. That's sort of being an intermediary, providing some accounting assistance and review, but ultimately all the accounting, all the check writing, all of these responsibility has been on the sponsee under Model C, right? So it's a pre-approved grant model, much more suitable for projects that have a specific budget amount and also specific expenditures within that budget amount. So a budget can be produced, approved in advance, and then executed on. And there's some leniency in terms of expenditures, in terms of variance. In other words, there could be variance in the money spent. So if you had certain line items, expenses, and you veered off by 10%, that may not be a breach of the Model C fiscal sponsor agreement. And that's something that's negotiated by the parties. There may be additional consents that are needed when you engage in Model C fiscal sponsorship. The much more common approach is Model A. And in Model A, every single expenditure for the project is approved by the sponsor, and they actually are writing the checks. And so therefore they have more control, they have more responsibility, but they can also ensure in a more confident way that the charity is actually being done. The good is being done. Okay, and hopefully you can see between Model A and Model C is more sort of taking the money in and then giving it over, trusting this party's going to do it. You will get the receipts at the end, but there's no real sort of interactive relationship. It's sort of more at the end of the project. So that's an appreciation between Model A and Model C.